Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Therapist Theater. It's the podcast where we take a look at relationships and mental health through the lens of movies, TV, and pop culture. I'm your host, Josh Treese. I've got a master's degree in marriage and family counseling and therapy, and I'm a practicing therapist in Music City, USA. I also love movies. No, I mean really love. I'm on a mission to help people more easily understand mental health and relationships and help break down the stigmas surrounding counseling and therapy. And that's why every week, a guest therapist and I talk about a movie and what relationship or mental health issues it highlights. Thanks so much for downloading today's episode. Make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss any future episodes. And while you're doing that, help the show out by giving it a 5-star rating and review in the podcast app. Today in the theater, my guest is Nate Larkin. Nate is what you might call a hope dealer, a guy who uses his story of overcoming addiction and finding recovery to help others know that there is a way out. He's the very first guest that I've welcomed into the theater that's not a trained therapist. Rather, he's someone who, through relationship, is helping others. That means that today's episode is going to be a little bit different. Nate courageously shares with us his story of addiction and what it looked like for him. He also brought with him 2017's The Florida Project. IMDb says that it's set over one summer. The film follows precocious 6-year-old Mooney as she courts mischief and adventure with her ragtag playmates and bonds with her rebellious but caring mother, all while living in the shadows of Walt Disney World. That's a very light description of what the movie's really about. So I wanted to give a warning to listeners. Today's episode deals with some subject matter and themes that are mature. And if you've got little ones within earshot, you might consider putting in headphones or hitting pause until they're away. Between Nate's story and some of the themes in the movie, there's things that you might not be ready to share with your little one yet. I'm so incredibly humbled and honored to have had the chance to sit with Nate and hear his story, and I know that you'll be impacted by it too. So let's dim the lights, raise the curtain, and start the previews. Welcome to the theater. Nate, welcome to the theater.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. I can't even tell you how excited I've been to have you in and to chat with you over this. When I remember in my own therapy, at some point in the middle of the 2.5 years, I did a group therapy, like 6 months, and we had this room that we met in at the counseling center. And at some point, we were doing some kind of exercise. I don't remember what it was, an intervention or something. And the therapist had me stand and face away from the group, and I was facing towards a bookshelf. Uh-huh. And I actually went through my phone the other day, and I found this. On that bookshelf was Samson and the Pirate Monks. Uh-huh. It was the first time I saw it. This was back in, 2014,
Okay.
I want to say, a while ago. So that was the first time I saw your name. And then I got to meet you not too long ago.
No, it was great. You came on the Positive Sobriety Podcast.
Absolutely, which was an incredible experience. I've had David on the show here, and I can't even begin to say how great it's been to meet him and to meet you and just to get to know you guys a little bit, and now to have you as a guest.
Well, it's a privilege to be here, man.
Yeah.
And I felt an affinity with you from the moment we met. I think we share some DNA here.
Yeah. I had gone back and listened to the episode of Positive Sobriety that I was on, and I remember thinking in the moment in my own skin, and then listening to it again, like some of the questions and insights that you threw at me, I was a little surprised at, not in a bad way, but just like, oh man, that's a little spot on. I was a little a little surprised by that.
Yeah. Especially since I ain't a trained therapist.
Well, I will say this. You hold a special honor. You are the first person to join me in the theater who is not a trained specialist. And as I was leaving your show, I remember talking to you, and you said at that time that you were a hope dealer.
Yeah.
And that was that was a good enough hook for me. My practice is called Mount Sparrow. Sparrow is Latin for hope.
Yeah.
First day of grad school, our professor said it's a therapist's job to introduce hope into the room. So hope is something that is the concept of it, and the I don't think transference is the right word, but just the journey of helping somebody to find hope. It's something very near and dear to me, and so for you to say that, I was like, all right, cool, I'm with you. I'm with this guy. So I guess before we get into the first questions, is hope dealer an accurate kind of statement of what you do?
Oh, I really think so. You know, my favorite activity is pulling guys out of the soup, introducing people to a world of recovery. Addicts who are about to expire, you know, and hauling them into the boat and letting them know that what feels like the worst day of their life can very well be the best. And to use Jay Stringer's language, this thing that they've been battling need not be a barrier. It can be a bridge to a better life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I when I was getting ready to come over this morning, I was thinking about a song that I heard many years ago, of which the lyrics have stuck with me. Stephanie Gretzinger from Bethel Music, and I'm not gonna be able to find it, of course, but she's got it's the song's called "Come Out of Hiding," and there's a lyric in it that says, "Oh, as you run, what hindered love will only become part of the story."
Yeah.
And like, I remember two of my buddies, Todd Wormers and Jared Farley, both other therapists here in town, who
I know Todd.
yeah.
Todd and I go way back.
Todd
Yeah.
was my best man at my wedding.
Really?
Yeah, we've been best friends for coming up on 20 years.
Oh, fantastic.
Which is embarrassing to say, the number there. I was talking to someone the other night, and I was saying something about, you know, oh, I'm not the same as I was a decade ago, nor the decade before that. And I was like, I should stop right there. I don't want to say a third
Yeah.
decade.
Yeah.
But they introduced me to the song, and I remember we were riding in the car one day, and Jared put it on.
Yeah.
And when it got to that lyric, I just remember, crying in the backseat.
Sure.
Because of how powerful it was. But that sounds exactly like what you're doing.
Yeah.
Is letting guys know it could be that. And even this morning, I went back and watched the I Am Second video that you did, and you said something similar in that video. Like I think that it was like you thought that the last day of your ministry.
Oh yeah. If my
first.
story ever came out,
Yeah.
my ministry would be over.
Yeah. So then let's alter the first question that I always ask and say, why hope dealing? Why do you do what you do?
Well, part of it is I feel as though there is a malevolent force in the universe that is always wanting to push me toward despair. And it speaks in shame. It speaks in tones of desperation. It points out my faults, and it really wants to shut down hope. But hope is the antidote. And very often the guys who I have the privilege of being introduced to because they've hit the wall, and somebody finally, I know a guy who knows a guy, and somebody got my phone number. They're at that point of despair, and they finally, they've told themselves that, this is as good as it gets. I'm just going to have to live with this forever. My life is, for all practical purposes, over. I'll never be able to love. I'll never be loved, And to be able to resuscitate them with my own story, and then introduce them to, a fellowship of other guys who, although the details of their story might be different, are fundamentally very much the same. So that, this delusion of, what do we call it? terminal uniqueness, is broken, and they can see that the new life that other guys have found, they can find as well. Yeah, so I do it partly to keep my own hope alive. It's really to fight entropy.
You get something by
You
giving.
bet. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's something that I've really tried to instill in the DNA of this show is, the therapy, mental health, relationships, hope dealing, all of this. It's not like a cold clinical. It is clinical a lot of times in the sense that it's a skill, but it's not like somebody in a white coat walking into a room and talking at you for 20 minutes and then leaving and you just go, what? But rather it's much more relational.
Yeah.
And that it's through, relationships that healing can happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's, and that's why I added in a question towards the end with all of my guests is like, what have you learned? Tell me something that you've learned from the clients. And so to even hear that in your business of hope dealing, that it's something that is important to you too. And that's really a step 12.
Yeah,
is you
absolutely.
Go out and you give to those who are still in need.
I keep what I have by giving it away. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I was telling a client the other day, he's been with me since I want to say February and is continuing his recovery. But I'm encouraging him to take it a step further and start with a sponsor and start working the steps and stuff now. And then as I was telling him more about the steps and what it can bring, he's like, well, that just sounds like something that everybody could benefit from. And I was like, yeah, yeah, absolutely.
You bet.
It's not, I'm a big advocate for as many people getting on the 12-step train as they can. I think it could benefit everybody. Because when you look at it, it's just makes sense.
I agree.
Nice. So what movie did you bring for us to talk about today?
It's one that I saw for the first time just 2 weeks ago with my wife, and it lived with me for 3 days. Just tremendously impactful. The Florida Project.
Yeah. I due to bad time management, I got up and watched it this morning.
Okay. All right.
It's on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
And so pulled it up on there and watched it. And it, I was telling my wife afterwards, she's going to watch it before we get together and record the wrap up. But I was telling her after, it was like a slow burn sadness that it left me with, where I think similar to what you said, the more that I sat and thought about it, the more sad I got about it.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe right after, when the credits started rolling, I was like, okay. Because it ends on a pretty happy image.
Yes. Although, there's a lot of ambiguity as to whether, that run through the Magic Kingdom actually happens.
Yeah.
There's a switch to iPhone camera at the end.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think I noticed that.
Yeah.
Huh. So what was it about this movie that made you want to talk about it?
Well, I think it hit me. Well, first of all, I'm getting old, and my memory is not as good as it used to be. So I've seen a lot of memories, but this is one that's freshest in my mind.
Yeah.
It also made a deep emotional impact, I think, for a lot of reasons. First of all, it's set in Florida, and I spent a very dark 16 years in Florida as an active sex addict. Now, we lived in South Florida in Fort Lauderdale, and this film is set in Orlando. Actually, I think it's more proper to say Kissimmee. It's Route 192 that runs from the Florida Turnpike out to the Magic Kingdom.
Like a suburb of Orlando?
Yeah. And it's where all the motels and souvenir shops and buffet restaurants, just one after the other, and, tourist attractions, all of them cannibalizing off, the rat.
Yeah. I lived in Orange County, California for a good while, so very familiar.
The
with
Disney
that setup.
effect. Yeah, sure, exactly. So I'm very familiar with that stretch of road. Spent we often went to Disney with our children. So my kids were growing up during my years of active addiction. And I was my best as a father when we were away from home and I was with the kids. Although my addict was still, very much on the hunt and window shopping and, running in the background even on family vacations.
Yeah. When the addict is active, it's like a hyper awareness.
Right.
You're looking for that hit.
Sure.
No matter where you can get it.
Sure. And in the seedier, more rundown parts of Route 192 with the aging and neglected motels and that kind of thing, that's probably where, the ragged people live. And that's where that's where the sex workers are most likely to be. And the strip clubs and the massage parlors won't be too far away. And I was trapped in that world as a user for a long time. So I have kind of this visceral connection. Allie and I watched it, and of course she has, I think, different emotional associations. She knew something was wrong during those years, but but still, we saw, place after place after place that we recognize.
Really?
Oh, sure.
So they weren't just like sets.
They were not sets. It's shot on 192.
Yeah.
So it's, we ate in that restaurant. Yeah, how many times did we go in that gift shop? Yeah,
Wow.
So I had that emotional connection. Then the story itself. First of all, it seemed to me that the story was kind of like, I don't know, Little Rascals meets Leaving Las Vegas, maybe.
That is the most apt description, I think, that you could give for this movie.
Yeah.
Because it's told from the kid's perspective.
Yeah.
Even so much as sometimes the camera is like waist down on some adults.
Sure, right.
I heard somebody say it was filmed Peanuts style, like Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
But then that kind of visceral, hopeless, addictive kind of quality that Living Las Vegas has.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
But at the same time, you've got these mischievous, sometimes destructive kids.
Yeah.
Having, I don't know, kid conversations, and we all have been kids. So I think my 6-year-old connected somewhat with the story. Although the lead character is a girl, Mooney.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how many of our listeners have seen the movie, but it's set. The movie is the primary setting is a motel that's managed by
Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe, who's just fabulous in the movie.
Yeah.
I just love the character of Bobby the manager. And I think, maybe one of the reasons why this Mooney is the 6-year-old girl who's the main character. Her mom, Hallie, is a
That's what I was going to look up. I'm terrible with character names.
Yeah.
And so I'll have like the IMDb sitting in front of me like, yes, that's that person's name.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Hallie is a tatted up, kind of strung out, former stripper or exotic dancer. She's got some troublesome personality traits. You can tell she's oppositionally defiant. She's not going to work within a structure. You can see her getting fired from job after job after job. She's now unemployed. She's on public assistance. She has to keep looking for work in order to remain eligible for that assistance. Knows at one point she says, the parks ain't going to hire me. And it's pretty clear she's not going to work at Disney. But she's a devoted mother to this 6-year-old girl. And they're living in this motel, paying Uh,
35
yeah,
a week
a night.
or night. Yeah, yeah.
$35 a night. So, and they got to pay by the week, and it's illegal for them to establish residence there. So, um, once a month they have to vacate the room, and so Bobby has kind of the manager has got this conspiracy going with other managers of nearby motels, where they'll move to the neighboring motel for one night, clean the whole room out, take pictures to establish that the room is empty.
That's what they were doing.
That's what they were doing.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and this place has got bed bug problems.
Mm-hmm.
It's the refrigerator, the washing machines are breaking down all the time. The
Ice
AC
makers,
goes
yeah.
out. Ice makers, crap. Yeah.
That's probably why it's so cheap. I was wondering, like, $35 a night. But
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, but there are a lot of people living at this motel.
Mm-hmm.
And they are the people who work the minimum wage jobs all up and down 192. One of my greatest heartaches is that during my years of active addiction, I really was blind to the very people who were being exploited by the system that I was in. I was participating in the exploitation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some of those people I would never meet because they were exploited on film, and I got started on in my sex addiction with pornography. Now, the actors in those films and videos, I mean, they were terribly exploited, but I never met them.
Mm-hmm.
But porn eventually led me to prostitution. First with women that I would pick up on the street, on places like 192. That would be a good hunting ground, you know, or certain areas in Orlando, as well as strip clubs, although they were never really my deal, massage parlors, that kind of stuff. And then when I succeeded in business and had some more money, I could be a little bit more discriminating, and I would pay some more money. But still, the first time I ever picked up a streetwalker, I didn't know what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
It was starting to rain. This woman's walking along the street. I think I'm being chivalrous to offer her a ride out of the rain. I don't know what she's doing till she's in the car and propositioning me.
So you didn't necessarily know that you were picking up a prostitute?
Not the first time, no.
Okay.
No. I was trying to be chivalrous. I was, I'm going to give this girl a ride. Now, if she had been terribly unattractive or of a different race, I probably would have driven right on by.
Mm-hmm.
So there was some element of the the hunter in me, probably.
Mm-hmm.
By this time, I had been, my thinking had been programmed by pornography, hardcore pornography, for years. So it's as though there was already a script running in my head when I picked her up.
Yeah.
And when she propositioned me, even though I was on my way to church, I was the pastor. It was Christmas Eve,
I feel like you're burying the lead here.
Yeah.
Adding these details onto the story that.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this was in Florida?
This is in Florida. This is in Fort Lauderdale. Yeah. But it was as though at that point I dissociated. I do think that most, if not all, sexual acting out is really dissociative behavior. I think I've been doing that in the peep show booths for years.
It's certainly fantasy.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. So sex addiction and intimacy disorder.
Right.
Meaning that, like, the addict, trouble forming healthy and lasting emotional bonds with
Right.
others. And I had the privilege of going back to my alma mater, Trevecca, last week and teaching in their group supervision at the counseling center on pornography addiction.
Oh, nice.
Which I even told them when I stood up, I was really nervous because as a student sitting in that room, the guests that came in, I was like, "You're a genius," and I was like, "But you guys have me today, so that's I don't you got the bargain version, I guess."
Yeah.
But in that, I said the thing about an intimacy disorder, but I also used Russell Brand's definition of addiction that came from his recovery book, that it's normal human needs, food, relaxation, status, sex, but prioritized to the point of destruction.
Oh, wow.
And I said to them, because, my counseling degree, Master's in Marriage and Family Counseling and Therapy, systems-based with a heavy concentration on attachment in relationships. And so in attachment, one of the forms, or I should say the types of attachment, is avoidant type of attachment. And I said to them, I don't have data to back this up, but I suspect that the majority of pornography addicts are avoidant attachment.
I am certainly avoidantly attached, or at least that's the template.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And pornography gives the avoidantly attached person the chance to disappear into fantasy.
Yep.
And get the things that would normally cost in relationship that they can't pay for.
Right.
Because in relationship, I've got to pay intimacy into the relationship in order to get relationship.
Right.
And if I can't do that, then if I turn to porn, then if I have a fantasy of being in power over another person, I can get that. If I have a fantasy in being adored by another person, I can get that.
Right.
And I can get it on demand by almost any type of person in how they look or behave.
Right.
And, the variety is astounding.
Yes.
And porn provides that.
Sure. And in the process can so condition us to novelty that the thought of connecting forever with just one person becomes less and less appealing.
Yeah, I watched a TED Talk the other day, Gary Wilson, the porn experiment or the experiment on porn or something like that. He wrote a book, I've got it over here, Your Brain on Porn.
Yeah.
But he talked about something called the Coolidge effect.
Yeah, right, yeah.
That I thought was so interesting. And it came from a story where Calvin Coolidge toured a farm or something like that.
Yeah. It's a great story.
Yeah. But introducing variety into sex almost prevents bonding to an individual. Yeah, which I thought was really interesting. But so porn can, in its fantasy, rewire your brain to, I don't know, you use the word scripts, but I guess expect some of the fantasy to be reality.
Yeah, I think so. I do. Yeah. All I know is that it was almost as though, I had this experience many times during my years of active addiction, where it felt I would leave the house with a route in mind of where, a mission, where I'm going to go.
Sure.
But as though my car was on autopilot, and it would.
So it wasn't like you were leaving with the intent of acting out.
Right. No. I would leave with the intent of not acting out. I'd make that daily promise. I'm not going to do it today. I'd wake up with that disgust, that self-hatred.
Shame, despair.
Oh, sure. And maybe I began the day with some prayer and quiet time. Try to, reset spiritually here to, apply, a partial solution to an enormous problem. Yeah, but somehow I now understand that the deeper parts of my brain were operating, and really that functional part of the prefrontal cortex that really is in charge of, rational thinking,
logic,
and moral
higher
decisions,
reasoning.
and logic, and impulse control. Was that connection was tenuous at best pretty much been lost by all those years of acting out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so when the midbrain kicked in and was ready to party,
Which is where, so the midbrain hippocampus, that's where your emotions live.
yeah,
And then the hindbrain, medulla oblongata,
mm-hmm.
which I cannot think about or say and not hear the voice of the professor from Waterboy, the Adam Sandler that looked like Colonel Sanders.
Yeah.
Sometimes called the lizard brain. That's all of the like instinctive type things.
Yeah.
And so, and I'll tell my clients this: whenever you get hit with stress and cortisol dumps into the brain, and then of course epinephrine, adrenaline kicks in, and you go into kind of survival mode. There's actually a trap door between the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex that shuts, and so you don't have access to that higher reasoning.
Yeah.
And I tell my clients, in an effort to get them to 12 steps, at your newcomer meeting, the very last thing that happens is they pass around a piece of paper, and everybody that is willing puts their name and number down, and gives it to the newcomer at the end to say, if you're really feeling the heat, call us. And I tell them, the phone's going to weigh 500 pounds.
Yeah.
It's going to be the heaviest thing you've ever picked up when you really need it.
Right.
But the reason why that exists is because when that trap door closes and you don't have access to that higher reasoning, you're making that phone call to, in effect, say, hey, my brain doesn't work. Can I borrow yours?
Right. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And then the result of that is the true antidote to false intimacy, which is what porn is. It's real intimacy.
Right.
You get a relationship with the person that you're on the other end with.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So you would leave without the intent of acting out.
Right.
But autopilot kicks in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was on my way to church when I, to set up for the Christmas Eve candlelight service when I picked up this woman. And, so she proposed. I mean, and it was rainy. It was cold. It was Christmas Eve, for God's sakes. And, she wanted $20 for oral sex in the car. And, I had a 20 that was supposed to go in the offering that night. But I was, the minute I was on autopilot, it's like where this surge, my pulse quickened. Suddenly my mind is kind of buzzing, and I am, well, of course, where are we going? Of course, it was awful. The moment it was over, it was awful. The whole rest of the night was terrible. And I almost was swept, over the edge of despair that night. Mm. But looking back on it, to me, my great sadness, and that came up in watching this movie and watching Hallie Mooney's mom, because Hallie at one point does turn to hooking, right?
Which, in keeping with kind of the movie being told from the kid's perspective, like she's, I think, in the bathroom taking a bath at the
every time. Every time her mom brings a John into the place, she brings,
so you don't see it in the movie.
No, but she puts Mooney in the bathtub.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
You stay with Mooney.
Yeah. That night, I never paused to wonder what would drive a young woman to be on the streets in the rain on Christmas Eve selling herself to strangers.
Yeah.
I never wondered, did she have a family? Did she have a husband or a boyfriend? A pimp, for God's sake? That never crossed my mind. Did she have a kid? What was her family like? What was her family life like? What was her back? What was her name, for God's sake?
Yeah.
None of that mattered. I'd completely objectified her. So it was really, since then I've had the privilege to interview some women who have survived the sex business. One of the saddest insights I received was from a girl who had been a stripper or an exotic dancer, right? Who said that she never turned to prostitution, but she knew an awful lot of girls who did, and all of them did because they had children to support. That's
Wow.
what took them over. And of course, in the movie, that really, I don't think that Hallie would have gone to hooking if she didn't feel the stress. She had to, they were going to be out on the street.
There's a desperation.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, so the movie hit me really emotionally. I really began to identify with the people who live on that level. I don't know if you've ever read the book Nickel and Dimed.
No.
Oh, what a great! And it's a very well-educated woman from New England. Somebody with an advanced degrees and a writer who envisions this project where she will pretty much falsify her resume. She'll live on minimum wage. And so she takes a succession of minimum wage jobs. She works as like a waitress in a Denny's, as a chambermaid in a hotel, and in the process gets to know, her fellow workers. Awful lot of women who are living with abusive men just because they have to have a place, they have to have a roof over their heads, or living in their cars. The ways in which they're exploited by the employers. It's just reading that book emotionally was similar to me, similar to watching this film.
Yeah. There's a documentary on HBO that I've passed by several times and not watched yet on people that live in motels.
Yeah.
I don't think on that same area.
Yeah.
But just what that's like. I know that in one description of this movie, or a YouTube video that I watched where somebody was kind of critiquing and talking about it, he said something along the lines of, these aren't people who are homeless or street-based, but they're on that edge. They're constantly teetering.
Right.
They're almost there. And so, in the movie, to what you're speaking of, they'll take steps that are drastic to avoid,
yes,
being there.
Yeah.
This might be too personal,
Mm-hmm.
but which we can take out,
No,
if it is. But
it probably won't be.
Was there ever a time while you were watching this that maybe you thought, is it safe for me to be watching this?
No, I didn't feel triggered. If anything, I would say that film helps again to serve as an antidote for me against that fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if sex addiction thrives on fantasy, anything that humanizes the industry and the people in it is gonna be a help to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't make me want to go into a strip club, or hire a prostitute.
Yeah.
Those are tragic stories, and I think you just have to, if you're engaged as I was. Now, I also, there is a section of the movie where a John that, for one thing, prostitution has changed since the years I was an active addict. Man, am I glad that I got into recovery before the internet really took off, and before there were apps that would help you connect.
Yeah.
Certainly, man, the hookup apps right now, shoo, I'd be a dead man.
Yeah.
Right? Jeez.
Well, if pornography in and of itself is fantasy, it's variety, and it's almost instant access.
Yeah.
To then add the internet on top of that.
Sure. So
Yeah.
you have, through the hookup apps that these college kids today are struggling with, when you can just go through a catalog of real people,
Yeah.
within range who will,
It's like ordering takeout.
Yeah, who will hook up for nothing?
Mm-hmm.
Holy smoke! But anyway, in the film, Hallie, through her phone, she has her daughter take pictures of her. They take swimsuit pictures, take pictures of each other.
Swimsuit selfies is what
Yeah.
she told
Yeah.
Mooney that they were going to do.
Yeah, swimsuit selfies. So Mooney has no idea that she's shooting pictures for the ad that her mom is going to use to attract clients. So the clients connect with her through her phone. And we only meet one of them. We meet him the day after. And he's just known as John, I guess. I don't know if we ever know his name, but he's a family guy on vacation with his wife and 2 kids. Oh, that hits a little bit close to home because it was Allie and me and 2 kids who has stopped in. He's come to Hallie's room and paid to have sex with her while Mooney's in the bathroom, in the tub. But Mooney does, I'm not going to, we don't need to know all the details, but Mooney does actually catch a glimpse of the guy, so she knows him. She still doesn't know what's going on. But, so actually Mooney sees him while he goes into the bathroom to urinate. And while he's in the bathroom, Hallie steals the magic bands that will get this guy and his family into the Magic Kingdom. The tickets, they're very expensive. They're worth, 4 of them, more than $1,500.
Oh, sheesh.
Yeah, because
Wow.
they're 5-day park hopper bands that'll get them anywhere.
All access.
All access. She swipes them. Well, the guy, and the next day, she goes and sells them to another tourist for $300.
That's a bad deal.
Maybe $400, something like
Yeah.
that. And with that, and you see really how little impulse control is because they start spending it almost immediately.
Yeah.
They go on a splurge at the dollar store. The John comes back the next day, angry, banging on the door. And Bobby comes and intervenes. And it's clear to Bobby now why the guy is there. But he pretends like, Hallie denies that she's ever seen the guy. Bobby takes her side and tells the guy, well, if you want, we can call the cops and you can explain why you were here. Mm-hmm. And the guy leaves. I could have been that guy, too. I could very much have been that guy. Thinking about, we never get to know him. We don't know anything about him. But the self-recrimination, the shame, now all the additional lying and covering he's going to have to do to somehow make up for this, the stories he's going to have to tell, really what kind of a labyrinth of lies is riding around in that family station wagon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And shame only grows in the dark. And
Right,
so, there's the old adage in recovery, you're only as healthy as your secrets.
Right.
And so now he's got more.
Right.
That he's got to keep stacking on top.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bobby was like I don't know if father figure is the right word for what he was at that hotel, but he was certainly a guardian angel for a lot of the people.
Yeah, he really was. Very winsome. Now, I don't know that he's really a very good manager, and he's failed in his own marriage, and he's got a rocky relationship with his adult son, Jack. But at one point he sees a potential predator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was 2 picnic tables kind of in the parking lot area that a lot of the kids were playing on.
Yeah.
Like they were a jungle gym.
Yeah.
And in the middle of that, there's this old guy just standing.
Yeah.
Who, at least when Bobby approaches, the guy is literally just standing there kind of watching him.
Yeah.
And he comes up and begins to question him.
Yeah. And it takes him out. I mean, it really takes him out.
Hey, everybody. I want to let you know all of the places that our community, which is still in need of a name, can be found online. First and foremost, there's the podcast, which you are currently listening to. Obviously, you found it on the podcast app that you're listening to it on, but you can also subscribe and listen on Spotify, Pandora, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Overcast. Next, we've got a Twitter. Check it out at twitter.com, username @therapisttheater, THTR. So THERAPIST, After that, we've got an Instagram. You can find us in the Instagram app @therapisttheater, all spelled out that time. Finally, you can find us on YouTube by searching Therapist Theater. And if you want to drop us a line via email, just send it to therapisttheater@gmail.com. In fact, why not email in your best suggestion for what our community should call ourselves?
So, but in the end, so Bobby has to make this decision in the end. He's already, early in the film, he kicks out one couple because they're hooking out of the room. And the policy is, you can't do that. He's got surveillance footage, so he sees that there have been guys going in and out of Hallie's room. So he's protected her and has protected the kids, but at some point he's got to make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Bobby's the guy who calls DCS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a point in time where I wondered if he wasn't enabling Haley to continue to do what she did.
Yeah.
Like even, in that kind of vacation, not like taking a vacation, but vacating process.
Yeah.
He she tries to go to the other place. They want to charge her something different. He walks over, tries to negotiate,
Yeah.
A lower rate kind of thing.
And then he pays for her to stay.
Yeah.
But she is so obnoxious that they won't let her stay.
Yeah. But then he makes the call to DCS or F or whatever it was called.
Yeah,
in the
right,
movie.
right.
Yeah. For them to come and check out Mooney and Haley and see if they can intervene.
Yeah. And at that point, Hallie does her very best to reform. She gives her weed away. She cleans up the room. She even takes Mooney on a date. They crash the buffet at a Hampton Inn, pretend like they are guests.
Yeah, gives their room number, quote unquote.
Right. Yeah. But the fact that even though she's got everything all cleaned up and it's looking good, Bobby has the goods on her, and it's pretty clear that the child is not. Now, Mooney still is naive. She has never been, sexualized or sexually traumatized. She hasn't seen what her mom's doing, but nobody.
Which
knows
is a
that.
miracle.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And I think, something that you said a little while ago. There was a point in time where I think you said your wife knew something was going on.
Yeah.
I think people in general, even if they don't know the explicit details, they always have an intuition that something's up.
Yeah.
So, I'm now Mooney, being the age that she is, naive and innocent.
Right.
But even so, there's probably something in her that knew.
Yeah.
There's something different.
Yeah.
Maybe not bad or wrong, but different about what is going on here. Yeah. So they come to the hotel and begin talking with Haley, and either Mooney is outside the room at the time or something, but they're one of the DCS people is talking to her on the it's not a balcony but a walkway.
Yeah. The catwalk there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Bobby does his best on that first visit to to keep the kids away from the conversation. But now the authorities have made the decision that they're going to place her in foster care. And objectively, although the foster care system is notoriously broken and bad things happen to a lot of people in foster care, there are also good things that happen in foster care, and there are good people in the system. I think objectively, Mooney is going down the same road her mother's going down. I don't think her long-range prospects in the care of someone as unstable as her mother are very good.
Mm-hmm.
And there doesn't seem to be anybody else in the no other family to take care of her. But Mooney can't see that.
Yeah.
And certainly doesn't want that, refusing it, and her mother as well. So, yeah. So then there's that fantasy scene at the end. And what's striking about this is that this squalor and desperation on 192 is just a few miles away from the happiest place on earth,
Mm-hmm.
where some of the wealthiest people in the world come to play.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, some of them take helicopter tours of the Magic Kingdom, and the helicopter pad is next to the motel.
Yes. As my wife was walking out the house this morning,
Yeah.
and I was watching the movie, I was telling her a little bit about what I'd seen so far, and I said, and also there's constant helicopter noise.
Constant helicopter noise.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really the soundtrack of the film, is that, yeah. So they're well aware that there are other people, in another plane. And at one point, Mooney's best friend, Jancy,
Who she met by spitting on her grandmother's car.
right, exactly, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's Jancy's birthday. And so for a birthday party, Mooney's mom, Hallie, takes the two girls and hitchhikes on 192 down to a place where they can get to some undeveloped land, just kind of scrub land, where they have a clear line of sight to the fireworks at Disney World, and they have a picnic and watch the fireworks. So there's this, there's the Magic Kingdom, and oh gosh, what's the name of the motel they live in? It's something really, really close.
It's not Future something, is it?
No,
Or is that
Future
the other
World
one?
is next door.
Okay.
And Arabian Nights is across the street, and theirs is like Magic Castle. I think that's it.
It's purple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Magic Castle. So yeah, so then there's the final scene. It's ambiguous. You don't know whether it really happens. I don't know how. In the final scenes, she runs away from the police, gets Jancy,
Mm-hmm.
and the two of them run all the way to Disney World, and run into the park and to the castle.
Yeah, the camera stays stationary at, and I used to live next to Disneyland,
Uh-huh.
And so when you enter, you go into Main Street,
Yeah.
and then at the end of Main Street is this like circular garden with
Right.
that statue in the middle of Walt and Mickey,
Right,
and then Cinderella's castle is behind that,
Right.
and that's where you continue on in there. And so the camera kind of stays at, the equivalent of in Disney World where that statue would be,
Yeah.
facing the castle, and
Yeah.
they just run into a sea of people
Right.
and disappear into it.
Yeah, yeah. But that's shot with an iPhone camera. It's different, and so it almost. I don't know that that's realistic. I don't think they would have ever gotten through ticketing and all that kind of
I
stuff.
wondered that.
That's a hell of a long way.
Yeah.
So I think in her imagination, she went to the Magic Castle.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Because the reason why she runs away is she is approached by a DCS officer
Mm-hmm.
who is, and this is another example, the camera remains on Mooney's level, and so the adult has to bend down into the frame.
Yeah.
but basically tries to explain to her, we're going to put you in a temporary
Yeah.
home. And she asks, am I going to be there forever? Well, no, that's not what temporary means.
Yeah,
Temporary means a little bit of time. And she is scared and she doesn't understand.
Yeah.
And so when she runs away, she runs down to her friend's room and the door opens and it's still on Mooney's level and she is just crying. And
Yeah.
this young lady that is just, I wondered at the time, I stepped outside the story for a second.
Yeah.
How is it that this child is performing?
Yeah.
I mean, how did this child get to where she is crying? Did they lie to the kid and tell her that she's being taken away
I don't know. I don't know.
But then she says something along the lines of, please, 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 this might be the last time that I see you, or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
And it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely heartbreaking. So I think what I'm hearing you say is that this movie is a reminder to you that every person has a story that they're in the middle of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they are where they are because of the context of things that have occurred before, systemically, personally,
Yeah.
and they're there for a reason.
Yeah.
And those reasons are, ultimately they're not the person, but they are maybe what's motivating the person.
Yeah. Yeah. And it reminded me as well of really there's nobody untouched by addiction. Everybody in that story is carrying a heavy load and doing the very best they can.
That's something that right there, doing the best they can, is something that I think a lot of people view addiction as this, an addict is a terrible, sinful, just bad, villain.
Yeah.
And I think the misunderstanding there is that addiction is a coping skill.
Right.
And it's one that there's another book, Prisoner of Another War, that's about trauma resolution. And in that, a trauma happens to a person. And out of that trauma is birthed two things. One is the wounded child who needs protecting. And the other is the survivor. And it's the skills that person develops in order to continue to make it in the world.
Yeah.
And it could be aggression. It could be fantasy.
Right.
It could be whatever it is that person needs to keep going.
Yeah.
And an addict is, somebody who is doing their best to comfort themselves the only way that they know how.
Right.
But like Russell Brand says in that book, it's prioritized to the point of destructiveness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it becomes more important than anything else.
Right.
Yeah. I think something that stuck out to me about the movie that I just felt so much sadness over was how Mooney and Haley, their relationship was more like sisters or friends than mother and daughter.
Right.
I think back to the scene that you described of Haley having Mooney take pictures of her. At the beginning, she says, hey, tie me up, her bathing suit in the back. We're going to take swimsuit selfies. And Mooney gets so excited because it's like just a fun activity.
Yeah.
And you get the sense, not so much this is a mother and daughter, but more like two high school girls or something like that.
Yeah.
This is fun, And then, even then, I thought, oh, this is something that she's doing with her daughter. It's fun. And it wasn't until she gave Mooney the phone, and she stood in front of the bathroom mirror, and she stopped and took down pictures behind her that I realized what was going on.
Right.
And just felt this, gosh, just despair, just this sadness, because
Yeah.
I thought, there's, it's so tough for a kid who healthy behaviors aren't modeled for
Right.
to learn. And so I think, as you said, she's continuing on the path. She would, of course, do the things that she saw had been done.
Yeah.
That was her. She's at the age where her worldview and how she understands how things work is being developed.
Yeah.
And so she would develop a worldview that would say, this is how the world works. And
Right.
so it would make perfect sense for her to continue on down that same path. How would she know of any other path?
Right.
And, maybe foster care becomes, I had a guest on a few weeks ago that talked about possibility models. A little bit different than role models. Role models, I want to be that person. Possibility models, just, a person can be that person. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Kind of a way of seeing something that maybe didn't know existed before. So maybe
Yes.
that's a way of Mooney gaining some possibility models outside of. There was also a friend that Haley had at the motel who had a son, Scooty.
Right. Lydia was the mom. Yeah.
Yeah, that Mooney hung out with all the time. And then Lydia would give food from the restaurant that she worked at. Haley would send Mooney to get it.
Yeah.
And then I think it was it that the hooking that severed that relationship because Scooty was there? Or?
Well, it was before that. It was when the kids went and explored the abandoned condos, the unfinished condos that had been abandoned during the recession.
And they lit the fire.
And Scooty had a lighter
with a naked lady on it
With
that
a
he was
naked-
so proud of that
That's
he
right,
found.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so they started a fire in the fireplace and wound up burning down the condos.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody at the motel is going out to look at the fire, look at the smoke. They're hanging out. And Lydia's like, Scooty won't come out and look, which is very suspicious.
Yeah, Haley was acting like it was another set of fireworks.
Yeah,
Come on,
yeah.
Mooney, we're
Yes.
going to go take a look. It's
Yeah.
going to be great.
Yeah. And so Lydia smells a rat, and she finally gets it out of her son that he lit the fire. And she has concluded that he lit the fire because he's hanging with the wrong kids.
Mm-hmm.
And Mooney's a bad influence, and he's not going to be allowed to play with her anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But then it gets uglier on down the line, especially when Lydia, she finds the ad that Hallie is using to get customers.
Mm-hmm.
And she passes it around the motel. Everybody's seen it. Now nobody is going to look at Hallie when she's in the laundry room. And yeah.
Yeah, it spirals, and even when it was just, you're not letting your kid play with my kid. She shows up at Lydia's work.
Yeah.
As a customer.
Going to torture her.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Tells Mooney, you can order whatever, as much as you want. We're going to be here for a while.
Yeah.
What's going on? Why won't you let your kid, And eventually, Hallie shows up in Lydia's room to confront her and beats her.
Yeah.
Pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this microcosm, not even a microcosm. It's a cosm because it's not macro, but it's of just systemic poverty, addiction. It's a cycle.
Yeah.
That I know there's no easy way
Right.
out of that.
Right. And in my comfortable middle class existence, I can forget that world exists.
Mm-hmm.
I can treat those people with disrespect. I can exploit them.
Objectify.
Objectify. So look, obviously, I don't go to strip bars anymore. I don't hire hookers anymore. I don't go to massage bars anymore.
How long have you been sober?
20 years, 21 years.
Wow.
Well, let's not have too tight a definition of sobriety. There have been some slips in there, but
Sure.
I've been on the journey that long.
Yeah. You've been on your recovery journey for that long.
Yeah. But I also tip waitresses heavily. I also make sure that I leave a nice tip for the chambermaid. I tip the person who works the front desk at the motel because they never get tipped, and they're working for minimum wage usually.
Mm-hmm.
And I am, and again, those are small things. Those are small things, but it's so easy for those of us with the blessings of prosperity to just start.
The privilege of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To somehow miss the humanity of, the people all around us if they aren't in our socioeconomic stratum.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I try. We really are all connected, man. We really are. And it's to their detriment and to mine if I start to imagine that I'm better than other people.
Yeah. I think it reminds me, something you said earlier again when you were talking about the men and the people that you work with.
Yeah.
The details of their story may be different, but there's common ground.
Yeah.
And I found through my work with clients when I was in ministry, and just even being at grad school, there could be a person who is almost the photo negative of me, the exact opposite, and we have things in common.
Oh, sure, yeah.
There's I don't know, just a base. We all have relationships. We all have trauma. We all have longings, desires, things that we like to do, food that we don't like to eat. And so it's a matter of, just not even asking the right questions, but just asking questions that you can find something that you have in common with another person. And I think it's really tough to not encounter a person's personhood when you begin to get to know them.
And I think that also is one of the challenges that addicts, especially sex addicts, but also drug addicts and alcoholics, face in recovery. If they have so burned family and friends, and if they're in a culture that is going to define them strictly by their addiction, they, I have found that one of my roles when I'm working with guys who are just starting the journey is to first of all see that these are good men.
You're not a bad person trying to become good. You're
Right.
a sick person trying to become well.
Right. I didn't actually know that when I got in recovery. I was so convinced by my inability to reform under my own power that I was so fundamentally flawed and bad. I'd spent years trying to shame my way out of shameful behavior. I'd thought that somehow if I could hate myself or hate my sin enough, I could stop, and could never find the brakes. That even when I got in recovery, when I first wrote my first fourth step, it was a federal indictment, really. It's supposed to be an inventory of assets and liabilities, but I saw no assets. I saw only liabilities. I saw only failure. I saw only the wreckage. Well, yes, in recovery, we do clear away the wreckage of the past, but we cannot lose sight of the beauty of the present and the hope of the future, right?
But that's probably something that's the toughest for a person with addiction, is to consider the here and now.
Yeah.
You know, you've been a time traveler for so long,
Yeah.
living, dwelling in what was and what you could have done differently or
Right.
how it was better than it is now, or worrying about what is to come, that you're never in that present moment.
Right. Yeah.
So to be asked to step into the present moment, you
Yeah.
know, for an addict is the toughest thing in the world.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's a learned skill almost.
Yeah.
I think it's probably why every meeting starts with, "Hi, my name is," and I'm a
Yeah.
insert aholic,
Yeah.
you know, because it's an opportunity to say, "I'm here."
Yeah.
And I'm recognizing life on life's terms and reality.
Yeah.
Um,
I would like to change the intro a little bit myself.
yeah,
I would like to say, I'm Nate, and I'm more than a sexaholic.
that's good. I like that.
I am a sexaholic,
Yeah,
but I'm much more than that.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's something that I have found in talking about addiction and recovery with people who are not in recovery from addiction.
Yeah.
That tends to be something that people get hung up on, especially if I'm doing it in the context of a church.
Yeah.
Well, I don't understand why you would have them say,
Yeah.
I'm a sexaholic, I'm addicted to this. Like, I mean, aren't they Christians?
Yeah.
Doesn't Jesus cover that? And I say,
Yeah.
absolutely they do.
Yeah.
But you're coming at this from the point of somebody who hasn't been underneath that.
Yeah.
And you're coming at this as somebody who can show up
Yeah.
and who can be present with people and who can have relationships and dependencies in a healthy way. And this is a type of person who can't.
Yeah.
And so it's asking them to take down the reality distortion field and live life on life's terms and start by the simplest, this is my name and I have a problem.
Yeah.
And that's all that is,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. But you're right. They are more than
Right.
I saw a book one time say that, you know, a person is more than the sum of their deficits.
Right.
And I really liked that. Do you mentioned that you tried to shame yourself out of your shame.
Yeah.
How much of that do you think came from your background in ministry and religion?
Oh, yeah. 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 It was steeped. I came from a religious tradition that really relies on fear and shame for behavior modification, despite ample evidence that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah. When I went to Trevecca last week, in my preparation for it, I found a clip online, and apologies to anybody that this may be offensive to, but I found a clip online of John Piper giving a sermon or something, and it was on pornography addiction, and I'll send you a link to it, but
Okay.
if just in case you want to get fired up and mad one day.
Oh yeah. Is it If I Gave You $1 Million? Is it that one?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Where he started by, and as a clinician,
Yeah.
so I think that there was 3 ways that it made me mad.
Yeah.
The first as a clinician, the second as a former pastor,
Yeah.
and then the third as a person. But he started out by saying, I think that addiction is a relative term. And as a clinician, I thought, oh, no evidence to back up this claim. Good,
Yeah, right.
Good, cool. And then he said, I would wager my life on this guess that nobody in here is truly addicted to pornography.
Yeah.
And then he said, it's a matter of proper motivation.
Yeah.
If a black hooded Taliban member drug your wife into the room with a knife to her neck and said, if you look at that pornography, I'll slit her throat, you'll choose to not do it. If I offer you $1 million, tax-free, he really emphasized the tax-free, which I thought was funny. In the middle of this illustration, you want to talk about taxes, tax-free, and say, I won't give this to you if you look at that pornography, you won't do it.
Yeah.
You'll find the motivation. And I thought, no, you won't find the motivation. You'll find the fear.
Right.
And it was an example of first and second order change. First order change in a person, there's a negative behavior. There's consequences to that negative behavior. I'm going to change to avoid the consequences, but as soon as the threat of the consequences is gone, I'm going right back to my behavior.
Right, sure.
Because there's been no true change.
Right.
Whereas second order change is, there's been an intrinsic motivation in me that has differed because I've realized that this negative behavior affects more than just me.
Right.
And so my heart has changed.
Yeah.
And so my motivations and my actions will too.
Yeah.
And it seemed to me like that clip was just a gross misunderstanding of what true change is and what causes it.
I agree.
And I think that's a tremendous example of where the church is getting it wrong when it comes to addiction.
Yeah.
That they just think, hey, we'll make you scared enough to where you won't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I have, I'm sure Mr. Piper is a good man and a well-intentioned man, but man, he pisses me off sometimes.
Yeah. I've had a bad relationship with him from afar for a while. I think starting with being forced to read Desiring God in my Theology 2 class in college, and then after the tornadoes in Oklahoma, him tweeting out that verse in Job about the wind coming down and destroying the homes with no context. It just...
I came home one day, God has restored my marriage, which is unbelievable.
Yeah.
My wife stayed with me, and we're now closer than we've ever been. But I came home one day to find her in tears. She said, I'm afraid I've made you an idol. Yeah, and so she had read a John Piper column that said, if you are afraid of losing your spouse, then that person is an idol. And she goes,
I'm about love?
I'm afraid of losing you, so I must be sinning. What?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Yeah.
I think that so many times the church asks people to turn their feelings off.
Yeah.
And just trust that what they tell them is right and good.
Yeah.
And don't think about it.
Yeah.
Just take it in.
Yeah.
Carve it into stone in your heart and know that it's permanent and it's all you need.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take into consideration that part of being made in the image of God is feelings.
Yeah.
And so because of that, to listen to your feelings, not to listen to your impulses,
right,
but to listen to your feelings and try to understand what they're telling you and what you need to do from that is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, to go back to it, how much of what trying to get rid of, which that's getting rid of shame with shame, your line of thinking got you into this, your line of thinking can't get you out.
Right.
Another recovery gym there. Maybe a great question is, I mean, Nate, you come from such an interesting intersection of worlds, addiction, spirituality, ministry,
right,
and now, being a recovery advocate, recovery, I don't know about provider is the right word, but certainly unofficial coach.
Yeah, cheerleader.
I'm sure sponsor. Yeah, advocate. To the person who is still out there,
yeah,
and who's still in it,
yeah,
and who maybe does come from a world of religion, no matter which one it is,
yeah,
spirituality. In the same way that the people that were living at the Magic Castle maybe couldn't get themselves out, if that person who might be listening feels like they can't get themselves out,
yeah,
what would you say to them?
Yeah, catch the bus. I mean, there are, I don't think any of us can get ourselves out. But there are buses. I mean, there are places you can. There are bus stops. There's a place where you can get a ride out. You're going to have to trust somebody else to get you out. So there are 12-step groups at this point, 12-step organizations for virtually any disordered behavior you can think of. And go online, and Google will tell you where to find one. There's probably going to be one local.
And if there's not, there's meetings over the phone.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are a Christian guy, one option is the Samson Society, which is the group that I helped to launch here in Tennessee back in 2004. Samson Society is not exclusively for sex addicts, although sex addicts are welcome. And there's a lot of guys whose the thing in their life that's bigger than they are is sexual in nature in Samson, but also we got plenty of guys whose battle is something else.
Is it exclusively for men?
Yes. Although lately the wives in virtual meetings have started holding their own virtual meetings, forming their own organization, which I think is fantastic.
What would they name it?
Yeah, that's
not Delilah.
That's not Delilah. No, yeah, that's always the first question. I don't know that they've settled on a name yet.
Probably best to let them name themselves.
Yeah. And by the way, the virtual meetings, that's the latest development and the most exciting. About a year and a half ago, we finally took the step back into the technology that caused a lot of trouble for many of us and opened up virtual meetings. So now guys from around the world can find a safe place to have honest conversations, make friends with other men who want to go in the same direction, get themselves what we call a Silas, roughly the equivalent of a sponsor, and start working our version of the steps and find some freedom.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like what you said about you have to trust somebody to find help.
Yeah.
And I think I would put out there that is a risk.
Mm-hmm.
It's a risk that I think is incredibly scary if you haven't done it before.
Right.
But is tremendously productive and helpful and rewarding.
And it's it's the main reason I tell my story, in that typically if I go into, like I'll be preaching this Sunday in a Church of Christ in Murray, Kentucky. Now it'll be a co-ed group, and I'll be sensitive and I won't be explicit, but I'm also not gonna, I'm gonna tell my story in its ugly detail, as well as its beauty, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I'm done, I will be the safest person in the room. And there will be some men in that room who, while they may not quite yet be ready to make the call, they've made a mental note.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm ready to talk, I know I can talk to that guy.
You've become a possibility model.
That's it.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful thing to do, and so that's why I really do encourage anybody in recovery. If you can do so without being suicidal. I mean, don't put your career at risk or your family at risk, but as vulnerable as you can be, that opens the door for other people
To share your story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, one of the 12 promises is to be able to look back on the past without shame.
Yeah.
And I think it's unfathomable to somebody who hasn't gone through recovery to be able to do that.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Do you know what I've done? Can you understand the terrible things?
Yeah.
But to be able to walk through the 12 steps, which can be a arduous journey, not can be, is, but extremely rewarding. I think to have gone through those, you can see. And it's not so much that you don't have shame, you don't have toxic shame, you don't have that kind of impulse to bury yourself, and you don't have that voice that tells you no one else will understand, no one else is like you, you're the worst of it.
Yeah.
And that shame's MO is to isolate, to pull you away from the crowd, from community, and to have you die of starvation and loneliness in the dark.
Yeah. Hey, can I take a bathroom break before
Absolutely,
we wrap up?
yeah. So, I think what I'm hearing you say is to get help to take the risk and reach out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is help available. And plenty of recovering addicts who understand that one of the keys to their continuing sobriety is to help others. You're actually doing somebody a favor if they're in recovery and you ask them for help. There was a voice in my head that says I was inconveniencing this guy and that I was he certainly wouldn't want to talk to me. Now that I get to take the phone calls, I understand it's a privilege. Mm-hmm. And it helps me. And sometimes I hear what I need to hear coming out of my own mouth. So,
yeah, well, there's an old adage that if you're trying to learn something, try to teach it.
Right, sure.
So in a way, being a sponsor or helping somebody, it's reinforcing what you've learned by giving it away.
Sure.
And I'm sure it helps refine it.
Yeah, that's my experience.
Yeah. Tell me something that you have learned from the people that you have worked with as a sponsor, a leader, a helper, a hope dealer.
Yeah. Well, I've learned, first of all, to listen with a forked ear. Because everybody, especially in the beginning, I don't expect anybody to tell me the full truth right away. It's just too hard and dangerous. I'm not sure. I know I didn't even tell myself the whole truth in the beginning.
Yeah. You didn't know your own story.
That's right. And I was careful. I mean, I didn't tell the whole thing. And I love I got a friend, Andy, who's sponsors a lot of people in 12-step recovery. And he actually has a wonderful speech, actually, that he gives each new guy. He just says, okay, I want you to tell me your story and tell me as best you can. And I want you to know up front that I know it's not all true. So at any time in our relationship, you can alter what you've told me, and I'm not going to think worse of you. So take your best shot at telling me the truth right now, and then change it as needed as we get going on down the road. I think that's wonderful.
It's such an allotment of grace.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That way I don't have to remember the version that I told my sponsor so that I remember the whole, I mean, my years of active addiction, it's so much lying, right? Mm-hmm. And it gets so complex as time goes on, and you have to remember what you told people, and everything has to be consistent. Oh, it's such a joy to be relieved of that. And if I can relieve the guys I'm walking with of that responsibility, and remember, these are good men. Mm-hmm. I know there's trauma at the heart of every story. And this is not to take away their responsibility for what they've done. It's not to in any way excuse.
But it's to give context.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, we addicts have found illegitimate ways to meet legitimate needs. And so the question is, can we learn how to meet those? The solution is not to live for the rest of our lives denying those needs.
Yeah, and I think sex addiction is such a unique addiction to seek recovery from because it's the only one where abstinence isn't the end goal.
Right. Yeah.
But rather connection.
Right.
And, not using sex, but enjoying it for what it was meant for.
Right. No longer using people.
Yeah.
See, that's what I did. I used people. I used my wife for the first 20 years of our marriage. Mm-hmm. And she always knew it. She always knew it.
Yeah.
And to be free of that is such a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say somebody's been listening to our conversation and they would like to reach out to you. How can they get a hold of you? Or do you have something that maybe, they might like to be a part of?
Yeah, well, they can contact my agent. No, I don't have an agent. They can always reach me at my personal email address, which is nate@natelarkin.com. They can, they can come to a meeting, a virtual meeting online, or a physical meeting of the Samson Society, SAMSON, Samson Society. Find us at samsonsociety.com or .net. And or they can listen to the Pirate Monk podcast or the Positive Sobriety podcast. The one
Highly recommend.
Yeah, those are fun. And I would say, my first piece of advice is abandon your private search for a private solution to your private problem, and reach out, find somebody safe, me or Josh or somebody. Yeah.
I know that, the start of my therapy journey was asking my mentor to meet me out of Panera Bread. And just deciding the risk was what I needed to take at that time to say, I need help.
Yeah.
Can you help me, or can you help me find somebody that can help me? So even if, you're in addiction and you don't have a person who is a recovery specialist or addict in your circle,
right?
Even just going to a loved one or somebody that you trust and saying, I have a problem and I need some help, is a great, no pun intended, first step.
Yeah. And by the way, Samson Society is a good resource for therapists in that it's a safe place for male clients to receive care and support between sessions.
Which I would, as a therapist, say, 12 steps are an integral part of how I treat clients.
Right.
But I would always recommend pairing it with therapy if it's possible.
Right, exactly.
If it's financially feasible.
Exactly.
Because it's not, true recovery isn't just about learning sobriety skills and strategies, but it's also about processing the traumas that have happened and helping you reconnect with your heart.
So we're on the same page there. We encourage all guys in Samson to seek help in therapy. Yeah.
Now, you guys have a conference coming up?
We do, yeah. Our fall retreat will be held the first weekend in November 1 through 3, at the Lakeshore Camp and Retreat Center in Eva, Tennessee, which is a couple hours west of Nashville.
Nice.
So Jay Stringer, author of the great new book, Unwanted, is going to be main speaker, and we've got workshops by some great people, some of whom you may know. KK Ray is coming.
Yeah, David's going to be there.
David Hampton's going to be there.
I hear you guys talk on a lot of your episodes. What's the count of the attendance in the workshops between you and David now? Is he still?
Yeah, David still has more registrants to his workshops than I do. So, yeah.
Well, maybe we can get that changed after today's. Oh, man. So every listener, make sure you sign up for Nate's.
That's right.
Nate's workshop.
Got to get my workshop count up.
So how can they, if they want to attend that, how can they?
Yeah, probably the easiest way to find it is to go to the main page at samsonsociety.org, and there's a banner about halfway down the page for the New Beginnings Fall Retreat. Click on that. It'll take you to the registration page.
Awesome. Nate, it has been such an incredible pleasure and honor.
I've really enjoyed this. This is fun.
To have you here.
Yeah.
And I'm so just immensely thankful and impressed and humbled to be able to sit and learn from you and the journey and the story that you've been on. And thank you so much for having the courage and the vulnerability to share that today. I know that the power of it is going to help a lot of people.
I hope so.
Thank you, sir. Hi, my love.
Hello.
We are doing something that we've never done while recording the wrap-up.
Mm-hmm.
And that is we are recording from our bed.
You guys, I am so ready to go to sleep. My jams are on. My face is washed. I am pure comfort right now.
Yeah.
And I'm really feeling it. I'm really enjoying it. I think we should do this from now on.
And by feeling it, you mean feeling the weight of our dog as he lays across you.
Yeah. Even better.
It's true.
Can't you guys just picture it?
It's the original weighted blanket.
It really is. It truly does. This is not, I know that we're joking, but like, it is not a joke that when he lays across me, it is like a calming.
Yeah.
It is truly calming.
As first demonstrated by your grandma,
Yeah.
who is all of 5 foot. Is she 5 foot?
I don't know. She might be under now.
She might be 4'10" or 4'11".
Oh, she's so sweet.
On Thanksgiving, the dog, I don't think he jumped up on her, but he kind of crawled over and he just kind of flopped on her lap.
Yeah.
And she then proceeded to move her fingers across his back like she was playing piano.
Yeah. It was really sweet.
Yeah.
It was the first time they had met, and also the dog is probably like, what, 50 to 52 pounds, and my grandma can't be much more than that. I really did worry whenever he was on her, but she loved it, and
Yeah.
apparently she still talks about it to this day.
Yeah.
So.
But I mean, the reason for us recording from where we're recording right now is, the episode's going up on Wednesday.
Right.
We are currently recording this on Monday, and
We're in the past.
time travel. Today's our anniversary.
Yeah, our 2-year anniversary.
2 years
of being married.
wedded bliss.
Yeah. We've been together longer than that. But.
That's true. 2 years and 1 day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So happy anniversary, love.
Thanks. Happy anniversary. Thanks for
you.
marrying me.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about the episode?
Oh, man. I really loved it. I was telling you earlier, off microphone, that there was something about Nate that just felt really genuine and authentic, and it made me feel like I was sitting in the room with you guys. And I just thought that was, I don't know, there was just definitely like a noticeable, I don't know, air of authenticity, I guess,
Yeah.
and like warmth, you know?
Yeah, I was so incredibly just excited and glad and honored to have a chance to sit and talk with him and hear a little bit more of his story.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed the time that we got to spend together. I had previously been a guest on his podcast,
Mm-hmm.
the Positive Sobriety Podcast. And any time that I get to spend with him or David Hampton, I just count as a net win.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I wonder if it's something, and I'm sort of skipping to the end here, but like at the end of the episode, he talked about preaching at a church, and he said at the end of that talk, he said that he was going to be like the safest person in that room. And that really struck me. And I wonder if that's something about it too. Like he's very open in a seemingly like healthy and positive, way of being vulnerable. And it's just inviting. Like it's not throwing something out there and then just backing up. Like I think it's just inviting. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah. Loved the episode. Another thing, mostly like, I feel like I just noted things that he said that were really powerful. And I think the first one was when he talked about sort of what he does. And he talked about, if there's a guy who's hitting a wall and somebody knows somebody who was, maybe says like, oh, hey, try calling this guy. I just thought that must be a really powerful moment to answer the phone with a person on the other end who is like at the end of their rope and has no hope, and to be able to say, no, it'll, like, I promise it'll get better. I promise you can do this. Wow.
And to know from experience.
Yeah.
So it's not even just kind of an empty, hopeful promise.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I suspect this could work, but I've lived it. I've walked it. I know it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just thought that sounded really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And cool that he gets to do that. And towards the end, he said something about how it helps him. And I thought that was really cool too. Like that to hear that.
Yeah, it's a good step 12.
This is something that I don't know if I have fleshed it out fully, like, fleshed out the thought, but when he was talking about the first time that he picked a woman up off of the street, and it was Christmas Eve, and he kind of sat in that story for a while. And one of the things that he said, he kind of talked about, like, oh, if it was a person who was less attractive, like, would I still have picked her up? I don't know. Like, he talked about not intending to do that.
Yeah.
But if the person was a different person, like, would he have? And he made a comment that he said the hunter in me was running in the background, was always running in the background. And it gave me a little bit of kind of a chills feeling to hear the hunter in me. And it kind of made me think, like, my mind just started going down the road of, like, I think that's significant that he uses that word, and I'm sure it's on purpose that he uses that word. And it made me think of, like, in this age of the Me Too movement, and, like, just how culturally, and I guess in our history, how men have viewed women and treated women. And I think, again, like, apologies for this being kind of like a winding thought, but maybe there's just I think that's significant, and I wonder if that is running in the background of a lot of men, and I wonder if it has led to what we're facing now, which is like a reckoning of, you guys can't hunt us anymore.
So I don't think it's running in the background of a lot of men. I think it's running in the background of a lot of addicts. Because an addict is always looking for the next hit. Always.
I see.
Especially sex addiction or lust addiction, if you will. Always looking for that next bit of fantasy.
Yeah.
And so in that case, the hunter it's a hyper awareness to look for that.
Huh.
But I would not classify that as a every man thing, because I do believe that there are men who have healthy sexualities.
Oh, 100%. I don't mean to say that all men have that running in the background. I mean to say, I wonder if this is more widespread than we even know, because look at the countless cases of men objectifying women to the point where they treat them as less than human. And now there's like a widespread, I mean, it's a reckoning. Like, it's a, we're speaking up, we're saying no more, some of us. And, like, yeah, so I definitely don't mean to say, and truly I don't mean at all to paint a picture of, like, all men anything. I think when he said hunter, though, I thought, ooh, that's just what it made me think of. It made me think of this historical kind of the position of men kind of in power over women and the way that it's been used. And so I think it just made me think, like, oh, I wonder if that's more widespread than people even realize. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, you and I talked about this already too, just as being like a good quote, but I'm going to say it again. I think you were talking about why he picked the movie. So it was in the part, it was in when you guys had gotten to the movie, and he was talking about that highway being really familiar. And I think you asked him if the movie was, like, triggering for him or safe for him.
If he felt safe watching it, yeah.
Yeah. And he said, if sex addiction is based on fantasy, anything that humanizes the people in the industry is an antidote. Whew. I just want to let that sit for a minute. Because, like, yeah. Yeah. People are people. And I haven't thought of that before, but it makes sense. Like, it makes sense that if what you're operating on is this kind of mode that doesn't view humans as humans. It views them as kind of to get your hit off of, then it makes sense that something that makes you see them as more and makes you see them for who they are it lessens your ability to view them as like fantasy objects.
True.
Let's see. So then I think as you guys kept talking about the movie, you were talking about Mooney? Was that her name?
That's the girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Hallie is the mom. Talking about her like Moody being taken away from Hallie. It made me think about the Brene Brown, Russell Brand podcast episode that we listened to the other day, when Brene Brown brought up the experiment when she asked people, do you think in general that people are doing the best that they can? And, of course they had varying answers, and everybody, you should all go listen to it. It's wonderful.
Russell Brand's Under the Skin podcast, available on anywhere you get your podcasts, or I'm sure he would say you can subscribe to Luminary and get new episodes.
For free, and then cancel your credit card, and then you just get free.
No, not for free. You put in your credit card, and then you get, I guess you get a month.
Yeah, that's what, and then he
Yeah.
said, then you can take it out. Like, that's
Yeah.
in his advertisement. He was like, just get the free month. Anyways, it made me think about that. Like, I think that question puts this movie and the characters into perspective. That, like, that mom was doing the best she could. Like, you saw her turn towards prostitution to keep a place to stay. And, like, so I don't know. I think, I just thought of that question, like, throughout the talk in the movie.
Well, I mean, maybe to give a little more context, so Brene, was meeting with a group of people, put forth that question, do you believe that people are doing the best they can?
Mm-hmm.
And then she got her answers, and then she took it a step further and said, now think of somebody who, maybe you're trying to help, who is not able to be helped or is not receiving your help the way you...
I think it was just somebody who you really struggle with, somebody who frustrates you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then if you were to view that person as they are doing the best they can, what does that change inside of you? And some of the responses that she got to that second question was like, oh, I would have to stop being mad at them and have compassion for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was great. Highly recommend listening. And yeah, I just think in general, if you think of people in that light, it gives you the ability to really view them for like who they are as a person rather than their actions and behaviors.
Well, I think it does exactly what Nate said. It humanizes them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it puts, because what I think that question does is it causes you to reflect on the times that you have tried your best and failed, and then it connects you to them doing the same. And so I think previous to that question, it's easy to take a top-down stance. Oh, I'm better than you. I'm stooping down to help you. But then when you make that connection, it puts you on the same level, and you realize, oh man, this is just my brother and my sister.
Yeah. So then the last thing, and I don't really have like an extra thought that goes with this, so apologies. But he made the comment, I'm quoting him now. Are you ready? Air quotes. In my comfortable middle class existence, I can forget that those people exist. And I just thought, I mean, that I love a good, like, let's talk about the systems and like systemic poverty and racism and all that stuff. Like, I just think I was really, it really struck me, and I really appreciated that it struck him, like that element of this movie, that it wasn't just, stories about these people, that there was an element of like, oh no, these people are real. People go through this, and like, I can't live my life forgetting that that's happening. I really appreciate that. And I also think that it's really important to live your life with an awareness of what's going on around you and the systems that you participate in and how those systems impact other people that maybe aren't you or weren't born with your, whatever it is, class, wealth, race, gender.
I think since entering the mental health field, it's something that I struggle with is to continue to remember that there are people who struggle. I think I have trouble making that practical. Like, I struggle with remembering being enough. Because I feel like to just be aware of it is, how is that different than not being aware at all if you don't do anything?
I think if you're truly aware of it, then I don't think you can not do anything. If you really have an understanding of like what's going on. I mean, I think, like, yes, fair point. Being aware isn't enough. Like, yeah, I think that there's action that needs to be taken, and maybe that action is just that you vote for different people because you know how their policies are going to affect other humans and not just yourself. But you know what I mean? Like, I think awareness isn't just you remembering them every once in a while. Awareness is moving throughout your life with the knowledge of, like I was just saying, like, how the systems that you participate in affect other people that aren't you. And I think it changes the way you move through those systems.
Yeah. It's something I keep thinking on. So that was our episode. I mean, I think that the themes that ran throughout it were a little heavier than normal.
Yeah.
Or I should say typical. But I think that so worth wrestling with and grappling with. And I'm just so honored to have been trusted by Nate with his story. And I'm so glad that he sat and told it and picked this movie and connected with it. And it's definitely one that I think, if you sit through it and watch it, definitely just causes you to kind of flop back against the couch with your mouth open and go, oh my gosh, this is something that's really happening.
Yeah.
So, well, cool. Well, let's continue enjoying our anniversary.
All right.
Yeah.
By going to sleep.
So I think it's time to raise the lights, lower the curtain, and say that for this week, the theater is closed.